Good day, grade 10 students. I am Mr. Rolly C. Franco, your subject teacher. We are now on the second week of our subject, Science 10. But before we start with our new lessons, let's pray first. Once again, good day, grade 10 students. How are you today? I hope that you and your loved ones are in good condition. Before we start with our new lesson, let us do first a recap of what we have studied for the past week. For the past week, we have studied about the different plate boundaries, the processes, and the landforms that occurs within the plate boundaries. We have also learned the different evidences presented by Mr. Alfred Wegener and Harry Hess about the movement of our plate boundaries. And finally, you've learned the different mechanism of how these plate tectonics or plate boundaries move with the theory that is more accepted today, which is the plate tectonics theory. Now we're done with earth science, we will now go to physics. And we will start this study with unit number 3, which is all about electromagnetic spectrum. But before we start with our lesson, I want you to get yourself ready and have your learning packet with you. Now that you are ready, let's start with our lesson. With this unit, we have two lessons. We have first, the regions of electromagnetic spectrum and their uses. And for lesson number 2, we have the effects of electromagnetic spectrum on living things and the environment. For lesson number 1, we have again the regions of electromagnetic spectrum and their uses. After this lesson, you can compare the relative wavelengths, frequencies, and energies and regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. And number 2, cite examples of practical applications of different regions of EM or electromagnetic waves. There are also values that you need to develop as you go on with the lesson. Number 1 is to show care and concern from one's health and environment. Number 2, exercise caution when dealing with electromagnetic waves. 3, promote the use of wireless technology and become a Christian steward of God's resources. Before we finally start with our lesson, I want you to answer first the pre-assessment found on the assessment sheets on your learning packet so we can check how much do you know about our new lesson. Now, what are electromagnetic waves? Before we study the electromagnetic spectrum. Electromagnetic waves are waves that can carry energy and that can travel without a medium. It is composed of electric and magnetic waves and can be used to transmit different signals from one place to another without using a medium. Okay, so yun yung mga electromagnetic waves. Ito yung mga waves na nabubuo sa pamamagitan ng pagtatransmit ng electric and magnetic waves. So it is a combination of electric and magnetic waves and kaya nilang makapag-travel kahit na wala silang medium na dadaluyan or dadaanan. So they can travel in a vacuum. Okay? So kaya nga ito ay ginagamit to transmit different signals or energy kasi nga kaya niya makapag-travel kahit na wala siyang dadaluyan. So for example, ito yung mga ginagamit natin to transmit messages, to transmit the broadcast of a TV, to transmit heat, etc. And you will learn on these lessons kung ano nga ba iba't ibang uri ng electromagnetic waves that is present or arranged in an electromagnetic spectrum. Okay? So electromagnetic waves are arranged in a spectrum or a graph that shows the differences between the electromagnetic waves. Okay? It is arranged according to its wavelength and frequency. So that's why we can see what are the differences between the different energies or different wavelengths that they carry. So yung mga different types of electromagnetic waves ay inayos siya sa isang graph or table na tinatawag nating electromagnetic spectrum. Okay? So ito yung picture or illustration ng isang electromagnetic spectrum. It shows the 7 different kinds of electromagnetic waves. We have first the radio waves, and then microwave, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma rays. So siguro nung narinig nyo yung mga binanggit ko, meron na kayong ideas na may ideas na nag-pop out sa inyong brain. So again, meron tayong radio wave, microwave, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. So ito yung mga different types of electromagnetic waves na meron sa ating Earth. And ito ay naka-arrange sa table na ito na tinatawag nating electromagnetic spectrum. Okay? Commonly term ang mga electromagnetic wave as the radiation. Okay? So mga narinig nating radiation. So ito yun yung mga electromagnetic waves. Related dito yon. Okay? As said earlier, they are arranged according to their frequency and wavelength. Okay? Do you still recall the lessons you've learned during your grade 7 science physics? Okay, so ipinaliwanag sa inyo doon yung characteristics and properties of waves, di ba? Merong iba't ibang parts and characteristics yung ating wave. Meron tayong natawag na frequency, wavelength, amplitude, di ba may mga ganon? Meron pang terms kayong na kung nare-recall nyo pa yung crest and the draw. Okay, magkaroon muna tayo ng short background information or recall with the terms associated with the different types of waves. Okay? Pag sinabi nating frequency, it is the number of cycles or number of waves produced in a second. Okay? Yung bilang ng waves or parang alon na napoproduce sa isang particular na oras. Okay? Yun yung tinatawag nating frequency. How about the wavelength? Okay, so from the word itself, wavelength is the distance of a wave length or a wave. So okay, so yung distance mula sa crest or yung pinakamataas na bahagi ng wave and trough or yung pinakamababang bahagi ng wave. Okay, so for example, itong isa na to, from here to here, it is a wavelength. Okay, from here to here, it is a wavelength. Kung gaano kahaba or kung gaano kaluwag yung isang or yung na-reach ng isang wave nung siya ay umakyat and then bumaba. Okay, so yun yung wavelength. Okay, ano naman yung amplitude na tinatawag? Ito yung height of the wave. Kung gaano kataas yung kanyang na-reach na peak, ganun din yung kanyang trough kasi parehas lang yun. Kung gaano kataas siya, ganun din siya bababa. Okay? So yun yung main properties or main parts of a wave. You have the frequency, wavelength, and the amplitude. Now, how does it related to our lesson? Okay? So, makikita nyo dito, naka-arrange yung ating electromagnetic waves sa electromagnetic spectrum according to their frequency and wavelength. Okay? So, makikita nyo dito, as the electromagnetic waves goes from left to right, okay, ano yung nangyayari sa ating frequency, yung bilang ng waves? Okay? From lower numbers or low numbers to higher number yung kanyang frequency. Mas kakaunti, paparami yung waves. Okay? How about for the wavelength? Okay? Mapapansin ninyo na mas mataas yung wavelength or mas malaki yung wavelength dito kesa dito sa my right side ng electromagnetic spectrum. Okay? So yun yung pagkaka-arrange ng electromagnetic waves sa loob ng electromagnetic spectrum. Okay? Meron dyan mga naka-assume na size kung titignan malalaki yung nandito sa left side kaysa right side. For example, yung radio waves, ang kanya daw wavelength ay kasi laki ng isang football field. So, ibig sabihin, bago siya makakreate ng bagong alon or bagong wave, is isang football field yung kanyang lawak. For microwaves, we have human. For infrared, we have butterflies or bacteria. And papaliit siya ng papaliit. So, ibig sabihin, ganun kaninipis na, papanipis yung magagawang wave sa mga sa mga nasa right side ng ating electromagnetic spectrum. Okay? So, ayan nga, pinapakita dito yung pagkakaiba-iba ng wavelength frequency. And then, meron na dagdag dito na isang property which is the energy. Okay? So, sa energy naman, habang lumalayo sa electromagnetic spectrum or from left to right, tumataas yung ating energy level. Kasi marami na yung frequency na nakikreate. Mabilis siyang mag-produce. So, dahil dun sa speed na yon is nakakalikha ng malakas na energy. Okay? So, yung mga properties na yan yung magdedetermine kung gaano nga ba kalakas yung energy or yung epekto na maidudulot ng isang electromagnetic wave. Okay? So, dito we have radio wave, microwave, infrared, visible, UV, X-ray, and gamma rays. Yan lahat ng uri ng electromagnetic waves. So, let us summarize. Okay? So, I can compare the relative wavelengths, frequencies, and energies of different regions of the electromagnetic spectrum. So, yun yung una natin objectives. Una, for wavelength or the length of the wave, longer to shorter. Yun yun na, tandaan na. As from the left side to the right side, the wavelengths of the electromagnetic waves goes from longer to shorter. Okay? For frequency or number of waves, lower to higher. Okay? Mas kakaunti, paparami. And then for energy, the same. Lower energy to higher energy. So these are the comparison between the wavelength, frequency, and the energy present in the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, let's go with objective number 2, the uses and applications of electromagnetic waves. Okay? So let's start with the radio waves. Okay, ito yung unang-unang waves na makikita sa ating electromagnetic spectrum. Radio waves are the longest of all electromagnetic waves. Ito yung pinakamahaba because it has longest wavelength. It is used for long distance communications. Alam naman natin, di ba? Pag nabanggit na yung radio, it is used for long distance communication. Okay. Ano pa kaya yung iba niyang uses bukod sa long distance communication? Dito magugulat kayo na actually gumagamit na pala kayo ng radio waves. Okay? So for the second objective, I can cite example of practical applications of the radio waves. Una na dyan, radio and television communication. Okay, so ginagamit natin yan para makareceive ng signal or para makapakinig sa radio at television. Okay? Radar, yung tinatawag nating radar, or it is actually an acronym. Ang ibig sabihin ng radar are radio, detecting, and ranging. Okay? Yung ginagamit para makapag-detect ng bagyo, o kaya naman ng mga helicopter na paparating. Okay? Radar yung ginagamit doon. Radar, ay nga nila. And then automation. Okay, for example, yung ating mga tinatawag nating ATM, ayan, yung automated teller machine, RFID o yung barcode. Okay? Ano pa yung ginagamitan dun yung popular na news for today, yung beep card. Okay, gumagamit din yan ng radio waves. Wi-Fi, okay? So yan nga, sabi sa inyo, isa na rin yung sa mga ginagamit natin parati, yung pala, ang ginagamit natin ay radio waves or wireless fidelity. Okay, so yung Wi-Fi, meron din yung radio waves. Bluetooth, okay? GPS or Global Positioning System para malaman yung location ng isang tao or ng isang lugar. Ayun nga, nabanggit ko na RFID or the barcode. Kasama na rin dito yung QR code. MRI or Medical Resonance Imaging, yung mga basic na ginagawa sa mga medical applications para makita yung different parts of the body. And ATM or Automated Teller Machine, okay, para makakuha ng pera. Okay, so lahat yan ay gumagamit ng radio waves. Okay? So mostly, yung mga nakikita nating o mga ginagamit nating text sa bahay ay kontrolado ng radio waves. So sila ay nagtatransmit ng signal para makarating from one place to another and hindi sila nangangailangan ng medium. Di ba nga? Yung ating Wi-Fi, hindi naman natin kailangan i-connecta mismo sa ating cellphone. So nakakapag-transmit siya ng signal sa loob ng ating cellphone kahit na wireless siya. Okay? So ganun din sa radio and television, kailangan lang ng antenna para makapag-connect sa ating mga pinapanood sa TV or pinapakinggan sa radyo. So yan yung isang uses ng mga uses ng radio waves. So overall, radio waves are the most prominent electromagnetic waves in our society or in our world today. Okay? Next one, microwaves. It is the second type of electromagnetic wave positioned on the second part of electromagnetic spectrum. It is discovered by Maxwell in 1864. It has its characteristics high frequency radio waves, very easily absorbed by water. Okay? So yung microwaves, para siyang special type ng radio waves. Mas malakas nga lang yung kanyang transmittal of signals or waves compared sa radio waves kasi nga mas maiikli na yung kanyang mga wavelength mas marami na compared sa radio waves yung napoproduce na frequency. Next, we have infrared rays. Okay? Bakit ba siya tinawag na infrared rays? Because it is located before the red waves of light. Okay, malalaman nyo mamaya kung bakit nga ba may red rays of light na tinatawag. Okay? So it is identified by Sir William Herschel. Okay? So based on the pictures shown on this slide, ano kaya ang functions or uses ng ating infrared rays? Okay? So we have for remote controls. So yung pinaka-basic na uses or application ng tinatawag nating infrared rays. Yung ginagamit nating mga remote controls uses infrared rays para makapag-control or ma-control yung device na gumagamit ng remote controls. Next is household electrical appliances. Gumagamit din ng mga infrared lights na tinatawag. Used to show the temperature variation of the body. Kaya kanina dun sa may picture na pinakita ko sa inyo, merong parang body ng human, tapos meron siya iba't ibang kulay, may red, may green, may blue. So yung infrared rays, common yan today kasi nga gamit na gamit sila doon sa tinatawag nating mga infrared thermometers. Okay? So yung mga thermometers ngayon, yung mga thermoguns na ginagamit, ay gumagamit ng infrared rays para malaman yung temperature ng isang tao. Kasi itong infrared rays, tinatawag din siyang heat rays kasi nga nagre-release siya ng heat. O kaya naman siya ay nagde-detect ng heat para malaman yung temperature variation ng isang tao. Okay? So yan din yung ginagamit sa mga airport, yung kapag dadaan ka, malalaman na kung ano yung temperature mo. O kaya naman, pag dumadaan yung tao, nag-iiba-iba yung kulay ng katawan niya, so depende kasi yun. Ginagamit din yan ng mga psychologists or ng mga therapists para malaman, for example, ginagamit din yan. Kunwari, gusto mong malaman kung talagang may mutual attraction kayo. So, tatapat kayo sa infrared camera. Tapos makikita doon, kapag tumaas yung temperature, kaya kapag tumaas yung blood pressure, magre-red yung katawan. So, ibig sabihin, merong physical attraction. Yung mga ganon. So, may mga ganyan, ginagamitan din yan. Tapos, ginagamit din yan sa mga hayop. Okay, para malamang kung nasaan sila. Okay, sa mga tinatawag nating night vision goggles or camera para malaman kung nasaan yung hayop na yon for hunting or for studying, di ba? Sa mga kung nakakapanood kayo ng documentary about animals, paano nga ba nila nakikita kung asan yung mga hayop? They use infrared cameras, okay, rather. And also provide useful details on the vegetation on the Earth's surface. Dito rin nalalaman kung nasaan ba yung lugar sa Earth na merong vegetation, may mga halaman. At ito rin yung ginagamit ng mga astronomers para malaman kung possible ba yung life sa isang planet. Okay? For example nga, paano nga ba natutuklasan ng mga scientists na merong pang ibang planets na pwedeng nating gawing tirahan? Okay? They uses infrared cameras as well para malaman kung may vegetation ba doon, kung may water ba doon. Siyempre, nadedetect din nila yung temperature kasi ng mga plants or nung area na yon. Kaya nalalaman nila kung gaano kataas yung temperature doon o kung may light support ba doon or kung may water forms. Kaya ito rin yung ginagamit to detect those vegetation or the life forms or life supports inside a planet. Okay? So yan yung ginagamit para again for remote controls, for showing the temperature variation sa isang katawan. Infrared rays yung ginagamit doon. Okay? So after infrared, papasok na tayo sa visible spectrum. Ito na nga yung visible light which is divided into different colors. Okay, which is the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Okay? So, depende kung anong wavelength yung nakikita natin sa mga objects. Kaya sila nag-a-appear ng ganong kulay. Okay? Bakit nga ba green ang plants? Bakit nga ba brown ang table? Bakit nga ba pink yung suot ko ngayon? Paano nyo nalalaman? Paano nyo nakikita? It is because of depende, yan kasi ang pinaka-sensitive na part sa ating mata. Yung mga wavelengths na yan, from 700 to 400 nanometers na tinatawag natin, yan lang yung kayang makita ng ating mga mata. Okay, so sila lang yung visible part of the electromagnetic spectrum na kayang makita or ma-recognize ng ating mata or ng ating brain. Okay? So sabi ko nga kanina, it is the only visible part of the spectrum. But why? Our eyes are sensitive to the electromagnetic waves of wavelengths that ranges from 4 times 10 raised to negative 7 meters or 400 nanometers and 700 nanometers. This is the range of wavelengths of white light. Thus, the spectrum of white light is therefore called as the visible spectrum. Kasi nga, yun lang yung kaya i-view ng ating eyes, yung tinatawag nating visible spectrum. Yun lang yung kaya niya. Yun lang kasi yung part na sensitive yung ating eyes. Okay? So, what are the applications or examples of the visible lights? Of course, unang-una na dyan yung artificial lighting. Okay? Lahat ng uri ng liwanag na hindi nanggagaling sa ating araw, which includes the light bulbs, traffic lights, billboard lights, streaming lights, running lights, kung ano-ano pang uri ng lights, yung mga nasa headlight, taillights ng sasakyan. So, yan ay part ng ating visible spectrum or ng visible light rays. So, yun yung isang uses. Pangalawa, optical fibers in medical uses. Okay? Hindi na nga lang yung optical fibers ay ginagamit sa medical uses, but also sa internet connection, meron na din tayong ginagamitan ng optical fibers. Mabilis kasi mag-travel yung visible light. So, kaya siya ginagamit. So, yan din. Kasama electronic appliances. Okay? Yung mga light ng electronic appliances used in traffic lights, nabanggit ko na nga, commercial displays, car headlights, and taillights. So, lahat ng uri ng lights na nakikita natin, it is the effect or the uses of the visible light. Okay? Next one, is the ultraviolet rays. So kung kanina meron tayong infrared o bago mag-red, pagkatapos naman ng visible light, ang dulo niya kasi ay violet, so meron tayong ultraviolet na tinatawag. Okay, ultraviolet rays are discovered by Johann Wilhelm Ritter. Ang major source niya ay yung sun. Okay? So sunlight talaga is nagre-release ng tinatawag nating ultraviolet rays. Yun ay harmful kung dumating sa ating katawan. But some ultraviolet rays, meron naman siyang good effects na tinatawag natin. Okay? So, ang ginagamit ng ultraviolet rays ay nga, usong-uso ngayon, yung tinatawag nating pang-sterilize or pang-disinfect. Okay? So, yun yung ginagamit na ngayon sa pag-disinfect ng mga gamit, etc. Kaya lang, minsan hindi kasi siya dapat madalas ginagamit dahil nga meron siyang adverse effects to our eyes kapag direct na nakita sila yan, o kaya naman it can also produce different side effects. So mamaya malalaman nyo kapag nandun na tayo sa lesson number 2. And then for fluorescence, okay, yung iba kasi ginagamit to as light, yung UV light. Okay, meron naman kasing tatlong types ng UV rays. Isa doon yung hindi naman harmful, okay? So, fake money detection, okay, ginagamit para sa malaman kung tunay nga ba yung isang money, tinatapat yung ating pera doon sa under ng UV light kasi may mga features yung ating pera na under UV light lang na-view. Used in forensics such as detecting fingerprints, footprints, and traces of blood, okay, sa mga crime scenes. Yan yung ginagamit para malaman kung meron bang traces ng footprints, fingerprints, or blood doon sa area. Okay? So, kung napanood nyo yung The Conjuring, siguro yun, alam niyo siya. Okay? Fly traps. Okay? So, yan ginagamit din sa mga, for example, sa morgue. Okay? Kung napanood nyo yung The Autopsy of Jane Doe. So, diba, sa taas nung pinaka-bed nung pinaglalagyan ng corpse or ng dead body, doon may nakatapat doon na ilaw na ultraviolet para kung sakali mang may langaw na dumating and dumapo doon sila sa light or gamo-gamo is agad silang mamamatay, makukuryente. So another one, production of vitamin D, kaya nga daw essential din na nagbibilad tayo sa sun. Hindi naman actually nagbibilad kasi ngayon medyo hindi na healthy yung matagal na pagbibilad. Pero essential pa rin na tayo ay naaarawan para ma-activate or ma-produce yung vitamin D sa ating katawan. And detect security marker inks. So sa mga bangko din ginagamit nila yan para makita kung andun nga ba yung security marker inks sa mga passport din, okay? Para malaman kung original or authentic yung mga security or mga IDs, okay? So yun yung ginagamit yung UV rays. Okay. Next one, X-rays. Okay, alam niyo naman siguro kung para saan yung X-rays. So it is also termed as Roentgen rays. It is because it's discovered by Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen. Okay, 1,000 times shorter than the visible light. It is used for airport security and internal body part scanning. Okay, yun naman talaga ang pinaka main purpose kung bakit may X-rays. Okay, so medical use yun nga para makita yung bone structure or yung different parts of our body sa internally. Engineering applications, gumagamit din ng X-rays and used in airport luggage scanning. Para makita yung luggage, yung laman nila, para malaman kung meron bang bullets or may mga unnecessary things na bawal ipasok sa loob ng airlines or airports. And lastly, the gamma rays. Okay? Given off by radioactive materials, highly penetrating. So highly penetrating siya kasi maliliit lang yung frequency, malalakas yung energy, so kayang-kaya niya talaga makapag-penetrate sa loob ng katawan or sa loob ng isang body, ng isang object or ng anumang surface. Okay, so it is used for medical treatment, lalo na sa mga cancer patients kapag sila ay pumapasok sa loob ng MRIs. Sterilizing equipment, ginagamit din siya for sterilization, pero sa, mostly sa mga food processing or sa mga kailangan talagang sterilized na equipment before it will be used. Okay? Used to detect cracks in metal. Okay, nadedetect din nila kung may mga sira dun sa metal para malaman kung authentic. Food preservation, yun nga, yung tinatawag nating food irradiation. Yung mga preserved foods kasi natin, dumadaan yan sa matinding exposure ng gamma rays din para ma-prolong yung kanyang shelf life na tinatawag or para humaba yung kanyang expiration bago siya mag-expire dun sa kanyang expiration date and ma-consume kahit na matagal na panahon na na-stock. Okay, and higher crop yield. Okay, ginagamit din siya ng mga magsasaka para makapag-produce ng magagandang ani. And product refining. Ginagamit din, tinututukan yung iba ng radiation para maging makinis, maayos yung mapoproduce na products. So yun yung iba't ibang applications or uses of gamma rays. So let us wrap up what we have discussed for this discussion video. Okay, let us have the EM waves and their different applications and uses. For radio waves, we have radio and television communication, radar, automation, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, RFID or barcode, and MRIs and ATM. Microwaves, satellite television and communication, long-distance telephone communication, broadcasting, weather forecasting, cooking food, shrink or destroy tumors. And then infrared waves, yung mga waves na before the red visible light. So for remote controls, check the temperature variation of the body, night vision goggles, provide useful details of vegetations of the Earth's surface. Then visible light is for artificial lighting, examples yung mga nasa taillight ng cars, yung mga commercial displays, yung ating mga screen of electronic devices. Okay? So meron niyang visible light. Then ultraviolet rays is for disinfecting, sterilization, fluorescence, fake malady detection, used for detecting security marker inks, fly traps, used for forensic examination, production of vitamin D. And then X-ray for scanning our scanning our body or scanning the luggage in the airports. And then gamma rays, medical treatment, sterilizing equipment, used to detect rocks in metals, food preservation, higher crop yield. So yan yung iba't ibang types na electromagnetic waves which are present in the electromagnetic spectrum and their corresponding uses or applications. Okay? So, if you want to learn more about our lesson, you can open the document file on your flash drive or visit the link provided in your learning packet. So, let's see how you learned our lesson. Answer activity 3, lesson 1, activity 2 to 3 on your assessment sheets. So, that's it for our lesson for this video, which is all about the regions of electromagnetic spectrum and their uses. I hope you learned well. Thank you, Rubicians, for watching and listening for this video. God bless and happy learning.